Hi everyone, welcome back to Winging It. My name's Rebecca. If you're new here, you are very, very welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, then thanks so much for coming back. This year in Winging It, we are making a panel each month and we're gradually building up the details of that panel through the weeks of each month. And if you're not sure what we've been up to, I will link the playlist at the top of the screen there so that you can go and have a look at January's and February's projects. And we started March's project last week by making our background, and it ended up looking a bit like this. So we used some dyes and inks to create that wild background, and then we toned it down a little bit with some slow surface stitching, using really, really simple stitches to add a bit of texture and to tone down the wildness that we've created. So today we are going to really get into our prompt for this month, which is spring florals. And I've taken the colour scheme from crocuses, and we're not just going to create crocuses, we're going to create all sorts of spring flowers. So we're going to use some fabric manipulation techniques to achieve that. Now, we haven't done any fabric manipulation on this channel for quite a long time, and if you look around on YouTube, there's not a whole heap out there. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we're going to give it a go anyway because I just love these techniques. They're really simple principles, and we're going to use very little stitch today, just simple running stitches to create shape in our fabric and attach it to our background. So I'm going to start off by showing you how to create petal shapes for each of the flowers we're going to use, and then I'll gradually show you how to build each flower. So we're going to look at daffodils, primroses, hellebores, lungwort and forsythia today, and crocuses are going to come next week. So if that sounds fun to you, then keep watching. You can use really small pieces of fabric and just some machine thread today, but if all you've got is embroidery floss, that would work fine as well. Now, I do know some of you are watching from the southern hemisphere, and some of you are a lot farther north than me, and so you're still covered in snow. I do want to encourage you that these are just prompts and you can adapt this in whatever way you like. So if you need to do some autumn florals, that's great. If you want to play around with the idea of leaf buds or snowflakes or something different, you can adapt this in whatever way you want to fit the world where you live. Or of course you could just follow what I'm doing and make a spring flowers panel in the hope that spring will come soon. So gather wee bits and pieces and let's get stitching.
Okay, so this is where we got up to last week. We did our background craziness and then we added in our slow stitch sections, and I really like them. I really do. The more I've looked at it, the more it's grown on me, and I've been a little bit shocked by the response to this one. Clearly you like some bright colours, so yeah, let's carry on with that. So today we're going to start adding some of our florals, and we're going to start with the outside edges. So we're going to add some fabric, we're going to do a little bit of fabric manipulation, and then we're going to add some embroidery as well to sort of blend out the edges. And you'll be delighted to know that I have got some more of my green, so I can fill in some gaps with that as well. But I'm also using the other threads that I've picked out. It's grown. I've added a few more, so I found some variegated threads as well, and I got some of these nice machine silks. I don't think they are silk, I think it's polyester, but they're quite glossy. Hopefully you can see the sheen on that, so that'll be quite nice. And I found some Silcos. I don't have a lot of purple anything really, just like I don't have a lot of yellow anything, but I found a few Silcos in my stash. There's a lovely old wooden reel there, and I don't mind using a little bit of it. I know some people only use the plastic reel ones, most of them are, but I do have a couple of the more vintage ones, both light petunia, so I feel not too bad because I've got two of them. So that's what I've fished out. So I've also got this nice variegated one that's purples and greens. I think it's called Heather. It's from the DMC Colorist range, 4505 if you're interested. So that's what I've got there. I've also got this one which is called Wisteria, I think, which is 4503. That's a lot more sort of acid. This one's more muted. I like them both for different reasons. So that's what we've got on the go, and I've started doing a little bit of prep just off camera. Just wanted to show you how I'm going about doing this. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. I've got a little bit of scrap paper, and I just wanted to show you how I'm going to build different flowers. So we're going to use we're going to create some spring flowers, and I'm going to start with a primrose because they don't get enough attention, I don't think. It's all about the daffodils and the tulips, and primroses don't get enough of a highlight, and they're so pretty. So what I've done, I've got my circle template. You could do this with a compass, or you could just draw around something, it's fine. I've drawn around my circle, and my template happens to have the halfway marks vertically and horizontally. So I'm just going to find the centre. If you did this with a compass, you obviously are going to have the point at the centre, so that's going to show you where you're looking. So I just want a bit of a sense for my primrose of where the centre's going to be, and I'm going to put my little circle in for the centre of a primrose. Now primrose petal, it's curly paper, it's really annoying, they are sort of a really squat heart shape. So what I'm going to do is start off by just putting in the tip, and I'm doing that with a little bit of a wavy line. I want these to be asymmetric just to make them look more natural. So I'm doing like a moustache shape at the top. Had lots of comments about my banana shaped snowdrop petals, so now we've got a moustache shape, like a handlebar moustache at the top of our petal. And then I want to round off these side bits like that, and then bring them to a point at the centre of my flower, and again I want them to be asymmetric, so I don't need to worry about matching up the two sides. So that one's a bit flatter, that one bulges out more. Okay, so that is my primrose petal. I'm going to mark it primrose, and you want 6 of those per flower. So that's our template for that one. Let me just roll it back. So when we cut them out, they are going to look kind of like that. That's what the primrose is going to look like. Now I want a slightly bigger circle, not miles bigger, but yeah, that one will do. And this is how we're going to create a daffodil template. Now some species of daffodil have 5 petals, some have 6. You can go with whatever you like. If you want to vary it a bit, because we've got a 6 petal flower here, if you want to vary it a bit, you can go with 5 on the daffodil, but it's fine. So daffodils, we are going to create a bit of an arch, so I'm just going to come up like that, and then I'm going to go down on the other side fairly equally, so maybe a third of the way out from the centre. I'm going to take my line up and meet it at the top like that, and then I'm going to come back down the other side. Now we want these to come in slightly at the bottom, so I'm just going to curve those round. Again, they don't have to be perfectly even. An asymmetric petal is going to help you make it look more natural. And then I want to also make my top slightly more pointy. So I start with my arch and then I shave off a little bit at the bottom, and then I make it pointy, even if that means going outside of my circle. So that's my daffodil. Now I also want to create a hellebore, so I'm going to go for something in the middle, like this, and I'm putting these crisscrosses on not because there are 4 petals, but because I just want to know where the centre is, so I don't want to accidentally make my petal bigger than it should be. So for a daffodil you want ×5 or ×6 per flower. So this is a hellebore, and hellebores are interesting. So we want a little stalk at the middle. You can make it a little bit wider if you worry about your cutting, and we want a point at the end, but we don't want it to be pointy, we want it to be rounded. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out and then back up and then down and around. And if you want to, you can curve in that bit there so that it's kind of pear-shaped, like that. So that's probably gone in a bit too far. So this is a hellebore, and you want 5 of those per flower. So now we're going to do a wallflower. This will work for a forsythia as well, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger than it needs to be because we're going to have a play around with this one. So I've got, what have I got there? An 18mm circle on my template, and for this one you want to make a kind of cross-shaped arrangement. So we're going to make a sort of N there, then we're going to turn it and make an N, and we're going to repeat that on all 4 points, and that gives us a wonky rounded cross shape like that. So that is for a forsythia or wallflower, and you want to do as many as you like, so times infinity, however many you want. Now I'm also going to do hyacinths, and for that I've just cut out a bunch of circles. I'll show you how I did that. So just circles. So all I've done here is I've chosen the size of my circle. I think, did I do that one? Yeah, I did a 16mm circle, and I folded back a strip of fabric just enough so that I could get that circle in, and I cut my strip. So I've got a nice purple fabric here. You could do blue if you wanted to. I want to kind of stick to purple, green and yellow. Okay. I'm going to draw on my circle in a heat erase pen. Oh, a bit close to the edge there, but it doesn't matter. These don't have to be perfect. The less perfect, kind of, the better. And then I'm going to concertina my fabric up. And you can do as many folds as your scissors will allow. So as many as your scissors will cut through. Mine have survived their brush with death the other day when I cut paper with them. So all I'm going to do is kind of cut round that circle fairly roughly, but I don't want any of these to be joined, so that's why I'm going all the way round. And notice I'm turning the fabric, not the scissors, and it will go a little bit wobbly at the thick bits, but you can just shave off any bits that you don't like the look of. And you can see I've got a really wonky looking circle there. It's cut the side off, doesn't matter. So we just want a lot of kind of circular shapes. That's fine. And the last one is lungwort. Now these are all flowers that grow in the UK in spring. It's not exhaustive because we're missing the inspiration for our colour scheme, which is a crocus, and we're also missing tulips. Don't worry about them, we're going to come to them. They are going to appear in week 3. Okay, so this is lungwort. So I've followed a fairly similar system to this. Folded up, I've got a bit of sari silk ribbon here, concertinaed it up. Just use the width of the ribbon as a guide. If you are interested, I think it's 2 centimetres, yeah, 2 centimetres, so just short of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, something like that. Concertinaed it up, just like I did with the purple fabric. You can give it a quick press if it helps. So concertinaed it like that, and I've cut out a very rough Mr. Man flower shape, so just 6 little arcs. So I'm going to cut out my petal shapes in exactly the same way that I've done these, and then we'll come back and start adding them to our background. So I have got a bunch of my petals done. So I've got my primroses, my wallflowers, I've got a whole heap of circles for my hyacinths, got some of my pink petals, I forgot what they're called again. Lungwort, that's what they're called. Daffodil petals and some hellebore petals, which I've done in a white. It's got little flashes of pink on. So I've got all of those, and we're going to start with the largest flowers. So I'm going to start by positioning some daffodil petals, and to do that I'm going to arrange them in 2 lots of a third. That's not very clear at all. So I'm going to arrange them in thirds of a circle, and then I'm going to put additional petals over the top. And if you have lots of different yellows, then go for it. I don't. Yellow is a colour that I don't use very often, so I tend not to have very much. So there's one daffodil. So what I'm going to do is pop a pin to hold those in place, so that I can tack them down. And we're not going to tack all the way around every petal. We're just going to tack them to hold them to the backing, and we're going to stitch them in the middle. So I want the petals to remain a little bit loose. So this is going to have lots of movement in it, this panel, because we're not going to stitch everything down. So I've got some yellow thread in my needle, and I'm just going to put some simple tacking stitches in the middle here. So I'm kind of doing an invisible tacking stitch, or a stab stitch if you like, where I'm just making a shorter stitch on the front than on the back. It doesn't really matter because this will be covered up by the flower centres that we're going to put in, so I'm not worrying too much. And I just want to make sure that there's a couple of stitches in each petal. Just to make sure it's secured to the background. That's loose and floppy there. That's absolutely fine by me. So if it's not clear what I'm doing, just don't like where that petal is. I've got a knot in my thread, I'm coming up from the back, and I take my needle back down just a couple of threads on the fabric away from where it came up, and that puts a tiny little stitch on the surface to hold things in place. And then on the back I go a little bit further away, so the longer stitches are on the back of the fabric, and we've got these little tiny ones on the front just to hold everything in place. And as soon as you've got everything secure that a particular pin is holding, you can take that pin out, and it saves your thread constantly tangling up, getting caught around the pins, and it saves you stabbing yourself, which I do an awful lot of. There's my 3 daffodil backgrounds added. So let's play with some primroses. So I've got 2 different shades here. I've got this more gold one, and again we want these to overlap, so these are going to go on like that around a central point, but what we want to do is give them a little bit of bounce. So what I'm going to do is fold each petal in half, and I'm going to take my needle just through that tip and just do a little whip stitch over the top. That's all. And then I'm going to take my next one without finishing off my thread, and again I'm going to go through, take a little whip stitch over the top of that fold. Doesn't much matter which direction because we're going to manipulate these shortly. So fold it in half, needle through the tip, and then round under the fold and back out again. And again, it's best not to be too precise with this. You don't want all your folds to be exactly the same. You want to keep it nice and organic. Oh, I've gone too soon with that one. Trying to be quick, you see. More haste, less speed, as my grandmother used to say. So underneath the fold, and back through. So fold it through the fold, go underneath the fold and back through the petal. And then before we do anything else, we're just going to position it. So I just want to keep in mind my border, and I'm just going to, I think I'm going to pop it there. So I'm just going to take my thread through to the back for a minute, and then I'm going to manipulate these petals before I stitch them down. So I just want to fold them around so that they sit on the surface of my fabric. Like that, and I want them to overlap, and if you've got one that doesn't want to sit, if you pull it forward it probably will. So I just want to make sure all the fabric is in the right direction. I've got my thumb over that, so they will spring because we've put some folds in them, but I'm just going to now bring my needle up from the back and do some more of those little stab stitches to hold my petals in the arrangement that I want. So I want them kind of overlapping in a little circle, springing from the centre of the flower. And once you've got a few stitches in, they will start behaving. So this is all about fabric manipulation. We're just making the fabric do what we want it to do. And you don't want to overdo it because you do want some spring in your petals. You want them to sort of lift up, and those little folds that we've put in at the centre are going to make them bounce up. So we're just working our way around to create our little primrose. There we go. So I'm going to create a couple more of those and scatter them around. I think I'm going to put one quite close, maybe down here, and then, well, I'll see how it looks when I put them together. So I'll come back when I've done that. Okay, so I've got 3 primroses in here. Let's put in some hellebores. So I've got my hellebore petals here, and we're going to do something similar. So I've got some purple thread. Now it doesn't really matter what thread because you're not going to see it. So we're going to do something similar. So we've got this little tab on our hellebore petal, and I'm just going to put a stitch. I want to go in from the front, and no I don't, I want to go in from the back and back down again. So I'm just putting a little stitch like that, and then I want another petal. Oh, they're a bit, they're joined together. So up from the back and down from the front. I want 5 of these. Don't worry about my heat erase pen because I'm not going to iron these, but you can erase it with a hairdryer. so I won't have to flatten my flowers down. I can just blow a hairdryer on it, and that will take all the heat erase pen off. So there we go, there's 5, and I'm going to make sure they're all the right way up. Can lay them flat, and we're going to just pull it in at the centre and make sure it kind of gathers a little bit. It will only gather a little because we've only put one stitch in. So like with the primroses, I'm going to even out those petals, decide where to put it. So let's have one here like this. I want to just alternate my petals, spread them around. Now it's often the centres that are going to reveal what these flowers are, so the centres are going to all be very different from each other. Let's get rid of those for a second. So I've got my hellebore going on, so just going to catch that down in the centre, and I'm going to make sure I catch each petal, and I'm going to go up through the petal and back down at the centre, and that's going to keep the petals in the right place. So just one little straight stitch at the centre of each petal, like that. There we go. So little hellebore. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just adding in flowers to fill the space. So that's how I'm going to do my hellebore. Let's finish that off and just show you the remainder of the flowers. What have we got so far? We've got some daffodils, a few primroses and a hellebore. So let's show you how I'm going to do this lungwort. So I'm coming up from the back, going across the flower a little way and going down, and then I'm going to go in on the other side, across the flower and down. So I'm coming out at the back, and then I'm going to pull that thread through and pull it tight so that it gathers like that. And so that, you could also use this as cherry blossom. So if you want to use it as cherry blossom, what I would do is stitch straight through the fabric wherever you want that flower to sit, and that will sit like that on the surface. If you want it as a lungwort flower, they're more like bells. So what I would do in that case is stitch it over the top like that. So maybe take you could just do like a whip stitch over there, but you might want to just catch your thread down at the very tip of the flower, and you could put a second one in if you wanted to. So it's across the centre and then catching it down like that. So that sits more like a bell. like that. Okay, so I'll show you that again. I'm going to put another one nearby, so I'm just going to bring my thread up again. These sleeves drive me berserk. Make better choices. Right, so up, just outside of the centre, across and down to the back. And then we're going to come up again and make a stitch across that, so we're making a little cross stitch at the centre, pulling it tight, letting it sit on the fabric on our background, and then we're holding it into a bell shape and putting a little stitch to hold it in place. And you can put 2 of them if you want to. And this is where you can manipulate it, so if you want it more like a bell, you can just fold it over a little bit with the tip of your needle. So we're not going to worry about stems at the minute, because all of these are going to be added in the remaining couple of weeks. We're just putting our flowers in place, and then we're going to make them integrate into the background more, and we're going to add on all of the flower details in another video. So this is all about just fabric manipulation today. Getting the basics in place, filling in our background, and obviously we haven't done our crocuses yet, so that's going to come in as well in a later video. So these are the basics. The crocuses are like magic. So I'm going to put a little cluster of 5 flowers. I don't want too much pink because that's not a colour that was really meant to be in my colour scheme. Let's go up one. So across the middle in one direction, across the middle in another direction, and pull through. I'm just making this up, by the way. I don't know, I mean there might be, I don't know of a video that you can go to and learn how to make all these fabric flowers. This is just me using some principles of fabric manipulation that I've used before, so I know kind of roughly what happens to fabric if I do certain things to it, and I'm just applying those principles, that's all. And the more of this kind of thing that you do, the more of a sense you'll get of how to create a 3D shape with a 2D medium. So obviously fabric is flat, it's in 2 dimensions, but you can, I mean that's what clothes are, it's flat fabric manipulated so that it fits a 3-dimensional body. And so once you've got a bit of an idea of what happens to fabric if you do certain things to it, you can play around and experiment and create 1,000,001 different techniques. So I really like that. I think that's a lovely bit of blossom there. So happy with the way that's worked. So that's how to create your cherry blossom or lungwort. Never know whether it's lungwort or lungwort, but I suppose however you say it is fine. And I'm not going to fill all this space obviously because we've got to get our crocuses in, so I'm just going to just put a scattering. I want some gaps, so don't panic about the gaps that I'm leaving, because they won't be left forever. Right, so hyacinths. So hyacinths have got a little star shape flower really. So what we're going to do is fold our circle into a quarter. Alright, so this is a bit of a wild gather. This is going to be much more controlled. So fold it in half, fold it again, and where do I want it? Let's put one down here. Let's get some purple down here. So what we're going to do is make a sort of cluster of these little flowers. So I'm just going to pop it on the bottom of my panel. So this is where my border is, and just like before, we're going to put a couple of catching stitches to hold it in place. Now if you want to, you can go in and put a little snip or a couple of little snips into your little circle to make it flare out a bit more. So you can do that if you want to. I quite like the way that works, and it's easier to do it once you've attached it rather than trying to do it before. So this is going to take a bit of time because there's quite a lot of individual flowers that are going to make up our hyacinths, and they're not going to be photorealistic. Obviously, we're just making something that is suggestive of a hyacinth. So a couple of stitches, and through to the back, and then I'm going to snip This is where it really pays to have a pair of scissors that are sharp to the point, so that you can get a good snip. Give it a fluff out and do the next one. So I'll do a few so that you get a sense of the shape that we're trying to create. I might speed this bit up because once you've seen me do it once, there's limited interest in seeing me do it 100 times. Not that I'm going to put 100 on here, but we want to make a sort of cone shape with our little flowery bits. So there's no really difficult sewing. You could argue that this is quite fiddly, but I think if you can have a bigger scale if you want to. You might have some that's got hyacinths or daffodils printed on it, in which case you could just put some bondweb on the back.
There's no really difficult sewing.
Fussy
You
cut
could argue that it's quite fiddly,
around
but
your
I think if you can make a big scale if you want to,
shape,
you could just, you might have some something that's got hyacinths or daffodils printed on it, in which case you just fussy cut, put some bondweb on the back, fussy cut around your floral shape, so that cut around the actual shape of the flower. I would put some bondweb or some interfacing on the back if I was doing that, because if you're fussy cutting, you are going to encourage fraying, and so that bondweb or interfacing will just hold the fabric together and stop it fraying. It gives you a more precise finish. You'll get your shape a lot better.
You are going to encourage
yeah, you just cut around shapes,
fraying,
fabric, so fabric manipulation,
so
so that you boat, and for a long time.
or interfacing
On this channel, I think it was back in May 2022, and we had a coral reef thing. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it in the card at the top of the screen. It's one of my favourite videos ever. Just love making it, love the way it finished. Love the end result, and big thanks to really like it. And again, in the world of YouTube, I've seen a whole heap of videos on fabric manipulation, so this is kind of, you might find a lot else like this out there. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Who knows? YouTube is largely a mystery to me. I just make videos, put them out there into the world of people who like them or they don't.
But yeah, you
And
can just cut around the shapes.
If you haven't got some really good fabric manipulation videos, leave them in the comments, because I love to learn new techniques, love new things to try.
Float your
But
boat.
so I've come across them
I've done
sometimes.
this for a long time.
So can you see how that's shaping up? So the idea is that we will create a shape that's going to kind of
think
it
it was back
in
in
so it'll come
May
like kind of cone shape up here, like
2022.
this, and then I might put another one here.
And we did our coral
Of these
reef
little
scene. If you
line
haven't
bits.
seen
So
that
yeah,
video,
we'll see how many circles it takes.
I will
And
link it
yeah, so
in
I'm
the
going to fill that in, and
card
probably
at
the
the
last
top
one,
of the
just
screen.
so I don't lose it. So you get the idea there.
And our last flower for today was our forsythia, or wallflower, both based around a star. I just need some more yellow thread, hang on a second. So this one should be quite easy, because all we're going to do is, let's put some forsythia over here, let's have it spilling over in this direction. So we're going to bring up our thread from the back, we're going to go through the centre of our flower and make a stab stitch. I'm going to come back down close but not in exactly the same spot and go through our fabric again like that, and when I pull it, it's going to close up into a bit of a cup, and so when I put another one nearby, as I add more, the petals are going to push and pull at each other so that that cup effect gets more intense. And again, if you want to make them fold in different directions, then you can just put an extra little stitch across the centre, just like we did with our lungwort, and that will make them pull in more than one direction, so they'll form little cups. And we're going to put some centres in these which will emphasise that effect as well. So let me do a couple more for you. You can also pull them quite tight, and if it helps to emphasise that gather, you can just knot them off on the back with a quilter's knot, and that will pull them a little bit more. And you just play around with the positioning of the petals to make sure that they're doing what you want them to do. So you get the idea. I'm going to put in all the rest of my flowers then, and then I'll come back and show you how it's looking at the end of today's part of our video. So that's all my flowers on for this week. If I just bring in my aperture and show you roughly what that's looking like. So you can see we've got our abstract background, and then we've got our three-dimensional flowers sitting on the surface of that, and I think that is turning into something really nice. So next week we are going to put in some centres, so we're going to play around with flower centres, and we're also going to create some crocuses to add into these spaces, and then hopefully our little spring flower spray will look more complete. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Have fun with your fabric manipulation this week. If you want to share your floral creations, do use either the Facebook group, and I'll link the details of that in the description below, or you can use hashtag FSH wingingit24 on Instagram, and don't forget to tag me in at Feather Stitch House so that I am sure to see what you have created. So have a ton of fun with your fabric manipulation. Can't wait to see what you come up with, and I will see you next week. Bye.